So people ask me all the time, how do I become more assertive? Now, sometimes that's just a general question about actually speaking their mind and saying something in a way that isn't going to ignite or trigger the other person. But that is particularly more difficult when you're dealing with somebody that's reactive, or maybe somebody toxic, or maybe it's just somebody simply that's quite intimidating for you. This topic is something that's very, very close to my heart because it is the absolute foundation of why I got into coaching in the first instance when I first hired a coach over a decade ago. Now, historically, I was the least assertive person ever, which most people seem to be surprised about when they meet me now. And although I was actually quite extrovert on the outside, I absolutely avoided any form of conflict whatsoever. Even the slightest sight of rocking the boat, I would stutter so badly out of fear that I wouldn't be able to even string a sentence together. Compounding the whole essence of being assertive with the humiliation of possibly stuttering, then it became a big issue and I just became massively conflict avoidant. But most people don't understand that actually assertiveness isn't just about dealing with conflict. Yes, that's a part of it, but it's also about just sharing what you want, what your needs are, what you desire, and basically who you are and what you're willing and not willing to accept. Now, firstly, this can be a bit of a bitter pill to swallow because when somebody is struggling to be assertive, what they're really struggling with is the fear of rejection. Now, most people, well, not most people, but sometimes people get a little bit defensive around that. So I'm not scared of rejection. But actually, if you're not speaking your mind, you're scared of being rejected about something. It could be about how you're seen by the other person. Maybe it's about your reputation. Maybe you're fearful of being rejected for a future promotion. There is something that you're fearing losing and being rejected for or about that is stopping you from speaking your mind. Now, people won't often think of it in the way of rejection. What they're more likely to think about is something along the lines of, I don't want to upset the other person, I don't want them to think less of me, or maybe they're worried about being labelled in some particular way. They might be seen as moody or aggressive or bitchy or bossy or dominant or demanding or anything along those lines. Alternatively, they might be worried about being seen as weak or stupid or just feeling a bit humiliated, particularly if they are up against somebody, like I've already mentioned, that's maybe more intimidating, somebody that's quick with the words. And one of the fears that they have is that they will literally just get a complete brain blank and they'll just stand there with no words coming out of the mouth. I can personally certainly relate to that because that used to be one of my biggest fears as well. So hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have some tips and some things to take away to help you be more assertive. But let's just remember that not everybody's level of assertion is the same as the next. Everybody's in a different place on that scale. Some people really struggle with being assertive on pretty much everything that they're required to hold a boundary or required to speak out about. Whereas other people, they're actually okay with being assertive in some different situations, but they find it harder in other situations, particularly when it comes to things like maybe there's a group environment, or maybe they're dealing with somebody more senior than them in the business, maybe their boss, or maybe it's somebody that's very, very significant in their life and they're worried about losing them. So everything I talk about in my line of work is about building your confidence and building your self-regard. Now, the higher your confidence and the higher your self-regard, the easier it becomes to be assertive. And that is regardless of who it is that you're talking to. Because despite how difficult it might be to be assertive in that moment, it becomes easier when you actually hold yourself with enough worth to realize that you're worth fighting for. Now, that is actually quite an important point because most people associate assertiveness with having a fight, with conflict. And in actual fact, most people think that they're assertive when, in my opinion, they're actually just being aggressive. There is a very distinct difference between being assertive and being aggressive. And most people opt for the aggression, which is typically when people say, I'm too assertive. You can't be too assertive because being assertive effectively means respecting yourself and respecting the other person. But if you believe you're doing too much respect towards them or towards you, that's obviously near impossible to imagine. So if you believe that you're being too assertive, the chances are you're actually just being aggressive. Okay, so one of the main things that I learned from starting coaching many, many moons ago was that actually confidence comes with taking action. Now, obviously the people get resistance when they're trying to be assertive, but the key thing to remember first and foremost is that you can't think your way out of a box. It's like you have to take the action and your confidence follows. You take your action and the confidence follows. Too many people use overthinking as a way to not take action and try to think about every single different scenario. If they say this, I can say that, or if they say that, I can say this. And fundamentally, all they do is get into analysis paralysis, but that's actually serving as a strategy to procrastinate on doing the thing that they want to do, which is to be more assertive. So the willingness to take action, the willingness to be uncomfortable in these different situations is going to serve you well, as opposed to trying to think your way to confidence before you give yourself permission to take that first action. Now, the reason why this is so important is because even if you try being assertive with somebody and it doesn't go, I don't even like the phrase, but according to plan, then fundamentally you're still going to feel better about yourself, because when you're taking action to stand up for something that's important for you, the message that your brain gets is, I'm worth it. I'm worth standing up for. Whereas every time you avoid something like that and you don't take action on it, you've basically just told yourself, particularly in your subconscious, that I'm not worth standing up for, that my needs and my desires and my wants aren't important, and their needs and desires are more important than mine. So understanding that actually the willingness to take action on this is absolutely essential. Now, I can't stress enough that if you're somebody that struggles with being assertive quite a lot, then the first number of times that you're going to do this, it's going to feel very uncomfortable, and it's the willingness to accept that that comes as a byproduct of starting to be more assertive. It's like anything, the more that you do it, the easier it becomes. But if you are not doing it, then expecting yourself to be able to go into a situation that's highly pressured and highly demanding and very emotionally charged is going to be much harder than if you're not taking action on the smaller steps. I tend to compare it a little bit like going to the gym. If you're going to go to the gym and you've got arms like pipe cleaners and you start lifting weights, you're not going to be starting lifting the heaviest weights. You're going to start with the smallest ones first and start building your way up. Being assertive is exactly the same. You have to build that bravery and you have to build that assertive muscle. Now, one of the key things to remember is that you have to show and demonstrate to other people how you want to be treated. You have to be able to communicate those boundaries. And if those boundaries aren't being communicated, then other people are likely to cross them, either intentionally or even unbeknown to them. But how you show up and how you let people treat you is paramount to how people will treat you. A lot of people seem to default to, well, if I'm nice to them, they're going to be nice to me. And this simply doesn't work that way. It's about communicating what it is that you want and expressing those boundaries. Now, if you want to know more about boundaries, then go to my YouTube channel and check out You Need to Know These 3 Things Around Boundaries, which gives you a whole decent amount of information around how to hold a boundary and what to do when those boundaries are crossed. Now, the thing to remember, if you're somebody that doesn't assert themselves and doesn't hold boundaries, then you are by default going to attract people who are happily going to cross them, regardless of how much you protest. If there is no consequences of people crossing your boundaries and you actually not asserting yourself in order for them to not be able to do that, then people are going to continue to do it. You're basically IDing yourself as somebody that doesn't hold a boundary. You're basically putting your hand up and saying, pick me, because if you cross my boundary, I'm not going to do anything about it. So you're basically highlighting to other people that you become an easy target. It's almost like an invitation for people who are maybe toxic or manipulative or people that want to take the piss a little bit. You see, when people avoid being assertive, it isn't always that they necessarily turn the back and walk away. It can be hidden in different ways as well, because being assertive isn't just required when you're in a difficult conversation with somebody. I've seen it in situations when you get a group of, rowdy people together, maybe a sports team or, a high energy group of people, and banter starts happening between them. Now, sometimes that banter can go a bit too far and it goes a bit below the belt. And maybe 1 or 2 people, normally one, is the center of that particular banter. Now, when the one person is the center of that particular banter, sometimes they do feel it. And I've actually had people say to me, yeah, that banter went too far, but I didn't know how to manage it. So I just laughed along with the rest of the group. And everybody's laughing and they're laughing with them. And actually what they're really doing in that moment, is I've already said, is that they're putting their hand up and saying, yeah, it's okay to cross my boundary. It's okay to go below the belt with me, because I'm not going to defend myself. So being assertive needs to come up in different ways. It isn't just conflict. It isn't just about difficult conversations. It can actually be when people are doing something that is disguised as banter, but it's actually something a bit more sinister. So something I think it's really valuable to think about is to consider this question. What is the worst thing that could happen if you assert yourself? What is the story that you're telling yourself that will happen if you assert yourself in this particular situation that you're faced in? This then gives you the opportunity to really start unpacking what is actually going on, where the resistance is coming from, and how you can start amending that moving forward so you can stop being passive in situations when you'd like to be more assertive. So another thing that I think is really important is work out what exactly your boundaries actually are. Now, a lot of people say that they have boundaries, but when they're questioned, they're not entirely sure with clarity what they truly look like. What is okay, what is not okay? What will you tolerate, what won't you tolerate? What is acceptable to you, what isn't acceptable to you? Without that knowledge, then it's going to be near impossible to decipher any situation that you're in to know if that's actually something that's crossed your boundary. But if you know that that is something that you won't tolerate, then you know without without any doubt in your mind, that is something then that you need to be assertive about, or something that you need to speak your mind about. Now, this is typically when people start saying, well, am I being too sensitive? Or how do I know that I wasn't overreacting? Or how do I know that actually it wasn't me just being a bit of a dick? Knowing your boundaries will give you absolute clarity around all those types of questions. Another thing to remember is that when you're being assertive, you have to communicate with respect. And that's respect for them and respect for you. The moment that you start becoming passive, you're not respecting yourself. But the moment that you start becoming aggressive, you're not respecting them. And actually you're not respecting yourself as well, but that's another topic. So fundamentally, to put yourself into integrity, you have to be communicating with mutual respect for yourself and for them. Now, I do understand in some situations, if you're dealing with your boss, this isn't about digging your heels in, because there might be some situations where they hold the final say on something, and you might say, well, then that's me being passive. Actually, no, being passive is not saying anything at all. Sometimes it isn't always possible to get your way, but most importantly is that you're still communicating to respect yourself in that moment in a way that actually recognizes that you have a desire and a need and something that wants to be heard. Now, when people start on their journey of trying to be more assertive, often people get a little bit overwhelmed at the beginning, and it can be very busy inside their heads. People kind of get entangled in their own words, and it all gets jumbled up, and then they tend to just shut down and not find the words at all. If all else fails, tap into how you are actually feeling. What is your body telling you? Because your body is always communicating with you, literally all the time. So it's that willingness to actually listen to what your body is telling you and what you're actually feeling. Are you feeling disrespected? Are you feeling manipulated? Chances are, if you're feeling manipulated, you probably are being. Okay, another thing to think about is that when you're trying to be assertive is to strike the right balance between your body language and your tone, and basically making sure that whatever you're putting across with that is actually going to land well. Because 90% of what we talk about comes from our body language, right? It isn't just about the words. So if you say, for example, take the sentence, what I need is, okay, if you go, what I need is, then obviously that's going to come across as quite aggressive. If you kind of go, well, what I need is, and you're kind of turning away and you're avoiding eye contact, you're also going to be given the impression to the other person that you're a bit of a pushover. So just simply keeping a very good posture and very confident body language with eye contact, not getting in the face, not raising the voice and saying, well, what I need is, people will much more likely to receive it well, because that's one of the key things about being assertive, is the delivery in a way that the other person is going to receive it well, as well as the fact that you're proud of the way that you've put it across. Now, a lot of people start thinking, yeah, but what happens if I start getting emotionally charged and I get angry and I'm going to lose my wig or whatever? Now, one of the key things as well is that if you're trying to be assertive, slow down. When emotion starts running into it, most people start speaking more quickly and they start getting a bit frantic like this, and it just comes across as like a bit panicky, doesn't come across like you're in control. So one of the best things you can do is just slow down your speech. Not only does that give the other person more chance to hear what you're saying, it lands in a more confident way, it lands in a calmer way, but most importantly, the impact it has on yourself as well, because you're effectively calming your brain down. You're giving your brain a chance to think, rather than it frantically scrambling for words in this state of heightened anxiety or heightened emotion or whatever. So don't forget to always slow down immediately, like actively and deliberately think, I must slow down my speech if I'm going to put this point across, particularly when you're in a situation when emotions start charging through your body. Now, another thing to really remember is that when you start learning to be more assertive, it does not guarantee the other person is going to change in any way. And it also doesn't guarantee the other person is going to start respecting you or giving you whatever it is that maybe you're asking for. And that's something to really, really pay attention to and really, really remember. Because fundamentally, if you're attached to the fact that, I'm going to start asserting myself and everybody then is expected to change because of the things that you're saying, if you're attached to that and then people aren't changing in the way that you expect them to, then fundamentally what it's going to do is start discouraging you to be assertive. So actually make the fact that you're being assertive the win, not making how other people are affected by what you say the win, or the focus of if it was successful or not. The fact that you do it is the success, not how other people change is the success. So something else that I also think is really important is that a lot of people start learning to be assertive and they seem to think that it's just going to be this lovely string of words and it's just going to be effortless and it's going to be perfect. And the reality is it just isn't like that. Regardless of where you are on your assertiveness journey, it's very, very important to remember that actually, if you're doing something that's scary for you in that moment, regardless if it's the first time you've ever been assertive in your life, or if maybe you're actually quite assertive already, but you're just having that first time difficult conversation with your boss. The first time you do it is going to be quite scary, and it might not come out as you really wanted it. And you might spend time afterwards going, oh, I wish I'd have said this, or I should have said that, or whatever it is that's going through your head. Drop the perfection on it. Just the willingness to give it a go, just the being willing that it actually might not be smooth and calculated and articulate on the first go, but most importantly, you're trying, because the more you do this, the more empowered you become and the easier it becomes. But if you're focused on getting it right and getting it perfect, then if it isn't like that to begin with, it's going to be more easy for you to just give up on it. Now, being assertive is literally one of the most important life skills that I think any person can have. And it's actually one of the ones that we're not really conditioned to do well. I mean, there's some people that can do it very well and some people can do it well in different situations, but there's a lot of people that don't do it effectively and they don't do it productively. And in my opinion, that's why there's way more conflict and rubbing each other up in the wrong way unnecessarily in the world, because we're not trained this stuff at school. But it is absolutely an acquired art, and it is one of the most powerful skill sets that you can have, because it basically enables you to show yourself high regard. It enables you to show yourself self-respect. So hopefully you've taken some tips from this video that will help you move forward with where you are in your own assertiveness. Fundamentally, if you want to become a very strong leader, or you want to progress into leadership, then having assertiveness and the ability to hold boundaries is absolutely essential. Now, if this is something that you really, really want to do a deep dive on, and you really want to start progressing how you communicate and how your leadership style of communication is, and how assertive you are in a way that is going to minimize that chance of conflict, then if you are interested in one of my programs, my leadership programs, then don't hesitate to get in touch. You can contact me through one of my social media channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or you can email me on info@angiemccullen.com. And I can give you all the detail around how that looks and how you can get right into the weeds of the things that will really specifically help you and your personal blockages around when you feel that you can't be as assertive as you'd like to be. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy this video, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers.